Survivor's guilt is manageable and treatable, according to experts, and here's how to seek help for it. Over the past week, news about 3 reported suicides involving people whose lives were affected by mass shootings sparked national conversations about gun violence and the long-term effects of trauma. Sydney Aiello, who survived the mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, before dying by suicide. And her mother told CBS Miami that she had been struggling with survivor's guilt. Many experts have highlighted the importance of recognizing and treating these conditions, which may not necessarily present themselves immediately after a trauma. Survivor's guilt refers to the literal experience of someone surviving a man-made or natural traumatic event, while the other person did not. Paraskevi Noulas, CID, clinical assistant professor of psychiatry at NYU Langone Health, tells Bustle. She cites examples like surviving a car accident that was fatal for other passengers, living through a school shooting that resulted in other individuals' deaths, or surviving a natural disaster where other people died. The essence of survivor's guilt is a feeling of powerlessness and helplessness. Survivor's guilt can sometimes be a component of PTSD, a condition where a person has difficulty recovering after experiencing or witnessing a traumatic event and experiences intense emotional and physical reactions to triggers of that event. But the two can exist independently of each other. Hendriksen, Ph.D., clinical psychologist and published author, tells Bustle. PTSD is more about avoidance. Imagine your life as a book. PTSD says, "I don't want to go back and read that particular page ever again," says Hendriksen. By contrast, survivor's guilt reads the page over and over again, asking, "What could I have done differently?" It's also worth noting that not everyone who experiences trauma will develop PTSD, according to the National Institutes of Mental Health, and not everyone who develops PTSD will become suicidal. Survivor's guilt is not an official diagnosis of itself, but pre-existing tendencies towards things like anxiety, depression, and self-criticism may also make someone more vulnerable to this phenomenon, as well as having experienced any sort of previous trauma, says Drive. Jean Kim, clinical assistant professor of psychiatry at George Washington University. Not everyone with PTSD has guilt about the event, although in a setting where there are mass casualties, e.g., mass shootings, combat, it is common for survivors to wonder what they could have done differently. Sheila Raja, Ph.D., associate professor at the University of Illinois at Chicago, tells Bustle. Kim says some ways to help recognize survivor's guilt, in oneself or in others, include signs of ruminating or focusing a lot on negative self-blame and guilt, as well as making statements like "it's all my fault" or "I shouldn't have been the one to live." Significant shifts in mood, behavior, or concentration can be additional signs. While it is typical for a person to ask themselves difficult questions after surviving a traumatic event, Dr. Raja says people should seek help when these thoughts are interfering with your ability to function, to work, go to school, concentrate, form relationships, and experience moments of some happiness.